Welcome to the Learning Experience Ops Show, where we talk about making learning better that's future ready. I'm Jason Gorman, the founder and CEO of Jackrabbit Learning Experience. We spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to figure out what's in the heads of people in Silicon Valley as they create these unbelievably powerful AI systems. And we also see and hear conversations happening at the government level. And very often there's nothing we can do but sit back and listen passively. And it can be easy to feel that our ability to make an impact is limited. But when I met my guest today, I became so excited about the work she's doing at the community level. She doesn't just talk about the importance of AI for teachers and others in her community, but thinks deeply about the very real human aspects of fear and joy in using these technologies now and into the future. Fadia Rostom is the founder of Vision Scholar, where she helps teachers harness AI in their daily work. With over 30 years of experience in education and technology, she has worked with hundreds of teachers to help them rediscover the joy of teaching and the reasons they entered this field in the first place. As a Syrian immigrant and mother of three, she brings a unique multicultural perspective on how technology and education can support rather than overwhelm. Welcome to the show, Fadia.
Thank you, Jason. And you made me look much better than who I am. So I appreciate the introduction.
That's not true at all. Also, I wouldn't be doing my job if I'm flattering at least a little bit. You have made the time to come and talk with me on this show. So thank you for that. We can jump right into the lightning round questions if you're up for it.
Let's do it.
All right. So the first one is just really quick. What is a 30-second elevator pitch about what you do?
You said it, Jason. It's the whole idea about bringing joy into the field of education. And if you ask teachers around the country or around the world, you will get that concept. You will get that they are overwhelmed and they started to lose the joy of teaching. People know that we don't sign up for this job because we're going to be sipping pina colada on the beach every day. It's a very hard job, but we do it because we really believe in what we do and we want to help students in every way we can. So that's what guided me through this. I really want them to help. AI is here. AI is happening and will keep happening. So we need to do it together.
And you may have already pointed to this in your answer and possibly even in my introduction, but what is the thing you love the most about the work you do now?
It's actually, the best part of what I do and I enjoy the most is the connections I make between people. When it's like making a match. If you know a struggling student and you match them with the best teacher, or you have a struggling teacher and you match them with the best learning partners, that is really the beauty of it.
And when you are doing your work and you feel like you are really locked in, you're in the zone, what's the thing you're most likely to be doing?
In what way exactly?
Well, if there's some activity that when you do, you just feel like your sense of time goes away. It could be anything. It could be with another person or something you do on your own, just something where you feel just that sense of focus and calm.
Yeah. You know what? I feel that when I am designing a learning material or a workshop for educators. I really get into it and like I feel my whole heart and my whole brain is so engaged because I really care so much. When you have passion and you care about what you do and who you are doing it for, you'll find yourself losing the concept of time, right? Like the time can be so slow, but it can be so rushed. And I just feel like I'm in the zone when I am working on a learning material for educators.
Oh, you're singing from my hymnal there. It's great. What is a skill that you are trying to learn right now? It could be work related or not.
A skill, I really need to learn how to say no to things. And especially with this, this era of AI, the things that are happening really quickly and new materials are introduced every day. And if you are passionate about what you do and who you're doing it for, and if you really have high standards for what you deliver, You just feel that you need to be on top of lots of things. So you know that what you're delivering is really high quality. And the problem with this now that, it's just too much and so fast. So, I find myself jumping into a new concept come or a new tool come or a new conversation come. And I really want to, engage. And I wish I had 100 versions of me who can engage, but it just can't happen.
Learning to say no. I love that. That's a nice way to say it. All right. Last lightning round question. What is a book or a movie or a piece of art or a podcast that is meaningful to you, but has nothing at all to do with work? It's not a work-related thing, but it does shape how you think.
I think about that a lot, and there isn't really one specific book or piece of art, but it's actually music, and specifically music from back home. There's a specific singer who's Lebanese. Her name is Fairuz. And she had this beautiful, soft voice that I grew up listening to. And I think it does so many things to me when I'm working or not even working. It connect me back to my roots and bring me back to who I am and what I want to be and what I want to do. And it brings me back to moments in my life that I cannot physically be there anymore, but it's a reminder of who I am and my roots, and it just keeps me grounded. And it's beautiful music. It's my own original language. So it's also remind me of, that I am always trying to adapt and learn, and you can be somewhere physically, but your heart can actually be somewhere else and your mind can be somewhere else. So it has to be music from back home.
I appreciate that. That feels like it sums up a theme that we've already started to develop already on this conversation. I think we're going to have more of, which is that the topic of AI, when we think about our jobs and what we do, can be so cognitive, right? Can just be so wrapped up in the tasks and how do we learn it? How do we apply it? What does it mean? And what is this new feature? And I love that you put your finger on something else, that it is not cognitive, right? That it's an emotional experience. It's a psychological experience. It's a whole kind of body, mind, and if you believe in it, soul experience. And I love that this is going to be our conversation. So we're gonna pivot into the other questions, but I just want to tease out that theme because it's so easy to get caught up just in all that stuff in your head.
Absolutely. And we all really need to, now more than ever, we really need to focus on the well-being of us and the people around us, a human being. Now more than ever, actually.
So we did talk about your work a little bit, but I would love for you to say a bit more about what your work is now. What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
I do work with the districts around here and nonprofit organizations. I design and deliver workshops around AI, literacy, ethic, how to integrate in your classroom, specific subjects, and digital well-being as well, digital wellness. That's what I'm working on right now. And I've been doing this for a while, not that long, but for a good amount of time. And right now I'm actually, my focus is on, a couple projects. The one coming up is that, it's called the We in AI. It's Summit in Education for the Berkshires.
And so who will be there and what is your role in that?
So I am coordinating the summit. It's BCC, Berkshire Community College, reached out to me. They're doing something really, really nice, and they're doing mini-series about AI. They started that last year, and they did, the first one was AI for all, and everyone was invited, and it was just the basics. And I did a workshop about prompt engineering. And they reached out to me because I have a background and experience in education. And they asked me if I'm willing to do a summit about education. And I absolutely said yes. I didn't think. Sometimes you just say, see, I have to learn how to say no sometimes, but not for this one. This one, I'm glad I said yes.
Good.
So, and they're wonderful people I'm working with from the BCC workforce department. And for this one, they just want it to be, they want this to be, delivered for a diverse audience. So it's not specifically targeting, only educators or only leaders or administrators or tech directors. But there's going to be lots of workshops around that. So the audience, a combination of educators, administrators, curriculum leaders, tech directors, parents, guardians, community members, board members.
Great.
It's open for everyone to attend. And I think it will be a really good start for us as a community to build on it moving forward. I know that we have 12 school districts in the Berkshires. We have BCC and we have MCLA and Williams College, and we have many private schools around. And I think the hope from this summit is to just bring everyone together. So, we all try to build that bridges and figure this AI thing together if we can. There's going to be colleagues from K through 12, higher education and workforce experts at the end toward the panel to try to connect those dots together. I am a big picture person. I like to focus on the details and I love to put my heart into it. But I also think that we really need to look at the big picture. And I think any discussion about AI in education without looking into K through 12, higher education and the workforce we're missing an opportunity for a very important conversation. So I'm glad that we're doing it this way.
That's terrific. You mentioned you have background in education, but I'm curious about the events or circumstances that really ignited your interest and passion in doing this work now.
Yeah. When I moved to the country here, to the United States, about 23 years ago, I was assistant professor in Damascus University. I had a degree in computer science, and that's what I was teaching. I was teaching computer science classes. So, to start with, this step was an easy, transition for me. I have the background and I have the knowledge, and I'm not afraid of technology or AI. So that helped a little bit. But I remember, when I came here, and I don't know if your audience know about that, but for anyone coming from a different country, you really cannot just jump in and start working the minute you arrive into JFK. You have to go through loops of, transferring credits and going back to college and, getting a license and all of that. So I remember that it really broke my heart that I couldn't teach. I've always focused on the human connection piece of anything I do. I build relationship with my students. And, when the war started in Syria and it lasted for about 10, 11 years, my students scattered all over the world. And I still have connection with some of them, whether they are in Canada or Britain or, Saudi Arabia or wherever they are. And feeling that I cannot teach anymore broke my heart. I tell people 3 events in my life broke my heart so far. When I lost my grandmother, when my dad passed away, and when I was told that I cannot teach anymore. So that moment in my life kind of define a lot of what I do, and the decisions that I make. I got back into the field and, I was a school principal. I was involved in education, different capacities. I was a school principal for the last 7, 8 years. And then with AI, I felt that it's, this is an opportunity for me to go back and try to help in any way I can with the background that I had. And, being a principal for the last 7, 8 years, it taught me that we have so many different learning styles and learning challenges. And, the potentials that AI bring for, individual learning and supporting the students It's just unbelievable. So, I look at my own experience. If AI exists when I moved here, my journey into my happy place, which is, teaching in higher education, my journey would have been much different and more doable. And I also think about AI. If AI exists 7 years or 10 years, like the way it is right now, when I started as a principal, can you imagine, Jason, how many students I could have helped? Students with dyslexia, students with learning difficulties. The potential is amazing. And that's actually what drives me every day. How many people you can actually help with AI and how much joy you can bring, not just to the teachers. Teachers are overwhelmed with so many tasks that has nothing to do with education, but not just the teachers, the students themselves.
Sure.
Take a look at any students who are struggling, with learning. Introduce them to the right tools for what they actually need and do it in the right way. And just look at the smiles, look at the happiness. It's amazing. I think it's amazing.
It sounds like you're doing a lot of work in the classroom with teachers, and you want to be around students. And I'm curious, in your interactions, what do you see as the most important challenge that you are focused on right now in your work, and how are you addressing it?
I think I do think about that too. Because you really need to know the problem to be able to figure it out. And I think maybe one of the first problems are it's in the name. We call it artificial intelligence. And then, people are stuck with the idea that this thing is, and then, you look around and most of the visuals are like a robot or a machine brain. I think that is really one of the biggest challenge. To change the concept, not change people's attitude and idea about AI. AI is not a robot that's going to take your place. AI is not going to replace you. If looked at the right way, it's a very powerful tool to help and support all of us. So I think that the most of the time when I'm with educators or, community members, the first challenge is to, change the attitude of the concept of artificial intelligence. I wish we named it else. Maybe people would have opened up more to it.
It actually leads perfectly into my next question here, which is, I mentioned at the top, fear and joy. And beyond maybe the intimidating nature of the term artificial intelligence, what are other dimensions of fear that you see that could be real blockers or challenges for teachers and other people using this technology effectively and to their own benefit?
Well, Jason, it's change. People say that all the time. It's a cliche. Change is hard, I know that because I moved to a country where I had to change everything. I have to learn a new language. I got lost when I moved. We lived in Pennsylvania for a couple of years. I remember Johnstown. It's called the Flood City. And I remember being lost. I didn't know how to get back to my own home, for God's sake. I think change is really hard, and I really understand it. In my heart, I understand how this can be, hard and challenging. And, but we can't act out of that. And there is fear. There's all the fear that comes with AI, the ethic, which is, those are real subjects that we need to be talking about as a community. The bias, everything that comes with the package. So there is that fear of the unknown and the fear of the known that we don't like. So it's many layers of fear right there in education with AI. But we can't do that. I come from a country where fear controlled so much of our life. The things that you can say or not say, even your dreams or what you can do, you say the wrong thing in the wrong place and you don't know where you will end up next morning. So we are here. This is the United States. We have the privilege of being free, not just physically, but in our brain, to challenge ourselves before we challenge anyone else. Learn about it and then decide for yourself if this is something that I can adapt to or not. We owe it to our children. In the classroom, I see it, I had hundreds of conversations with educators and curriculum leaders and administrators about we want the students to take risk. We want them to learn and experience and experiment and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. But are we really modeling that? If we have that potential for a tool that can enhance how we teach and how students learn two different concepts, as you know, if we have this opportunity, are we really breaching, acting on what we breach? If we want students to be brave and take risk and learn before making judgment, are we really modeling that for them? I don't know.
And what about the other side of that coin? And perhaps this is only possible when that fear hurdle has been leapt over. But what is the role of joy? Where do you see joy in this equation? And how do we need to think about joy when it comes to teachers and their use of AI, and students and their use of AI?
From my experience being in schools, hallways, and in the classrooms, I remember that many teachers had their, awesome, happy moments when the students raise their hand and ask a question. And it's not happening. And students are not asking questions. So, I think about what you just said and why does a teacher really like it when the students raise their hand to ask a question? Because they are engaged, or maybe because the actual learning, the deep learning is happening. So our educators in general, whether they are scared of AI, whether they are spectacular about it, trusted, not trusted, they all share, in my opinion, the same passion to ignite students' learning and passion for learning and curiosity. Yeah. So I think probably that is one of the things that, I look at often when I look into AI.
And for teachers to do this well, they work in a system. Every teacher works inside. They have a lot of autonomy, but they also do have to work with the system. There are standards, there's leadership, there are IT restrictions. What do teachers need in order to just be set up for success? What kind of permission do they need?
I think the teachers need the same permission that teachers are giving the students. The teachers are giving permission to students to make mistakes and try something and ask questions. And, I think the teachers need the same permission. And it doesn't need to be, AI doesn't need to be a whole new policy where we spend millions of dollars that we don't have and the training time that we don't have and a capacity that we don't have. It can start with a unit, give your teacher a permission to try to add something, a little bit of freedom in that area. I know and some people will argue or say hey, Fadia, it's easier said than done. This is very complicated. Okay, well, it is very complicated. Then we only have two options: do nothing about it, and generations of children will grow up not knowing what to do with their life, not just learning what to do with their whole life, because AI is not about classroom walls. They're just gonna, after that, they have another life. Or we can, do everything we can as a community to figure out what is missing here. So I always recommend this to schools. I say, anyone who asks about an AI policy or a roadmap, ready to go, this is actually ignorance, because you need to look at who you are, who do you serve, your community, your resources, your team, and build from there. No one should deliver an AI policy to a school and be proud of themselves for that, in my opinion. I don't know, this is a little bit strong, but we are different. We serve different population. We have different teams. What is doable in my home district, Pittsfield, is different from what is delivered in Lenox, which is 15 minutes from here. So I really think that we need to look at, our settings. Yeah. What are our challenges? How can AI support us in one of those challenges? It doesn't have to be everything or nothing.
And that a teacher should, it sounds like what you're saying is that a teacher should, be able to get interested in an application, not feel constrained to just try it, give it a shot, see what happens, give themselves the kind of low stakes opportunity to go and just do it and then see what the outcome is.
Absolutely. I think that, it's heartbreaking that, I think Massachusetts just announced maybe yesterday or the day before, like free learning. I think they collaborated with the AI Hub, which is amazing.
Yes.
About time, huh? Better late than never. Offer free training and free resources. This is important. This is important stuff. Everyone, whether they like to use AI or not, need to be educated about it. So imagine our educators, we put our children in their hands since they're like 3 years old. So I think it's really important that everyone get a proper training. And, on top of that, it's very important that every educator have a little bit space to try something. And the best way actually to try AI, in my opinion, in classroom is across subjects, like interdisciplinary, because that's where it works the best. Oh. I remember when I was a few years ago, I had, it was not my idea. I wish it was. It was my math teacher idea. So she's my math teacher. She was teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And she said, Fadia, I want to do a unit where I work with other teachers. So what she wanted to do is to host a Thanksgiving dinner. That's my math teacher. And she said, I want to host a Thanksgiving dinner where the students do everything. So they plan the Thanksgiving dinner, they buy the stuff, they calculate how many people are coming and how much they need to spend on this. They need to raise the money for it, and they need to create the marketing materials and the invitations and on all of that. And then they actually have to set up the cafeteria for it and host.
Great.
It's amazing. Yeah. So, this is kind of what AI can actually do in education. AI is not like one thing. It's not like one thing to teach in like one subject. It's actually, if we look at it and the potential, it's a way to work across subjects and content and teach our students what we stopped teaching a long time ago. And that's critical thinking, connecting their knowledge, retaining information when it's needed, team leadership and team build and communication, collaboration, and all of that. So that's one way of doing it.
And when you do this work, as you're doing your work, how are you thinking about the conditions for success? And if things go well, how will you know that your effort is kind of pushing things in the right direction for your community?
It's funny that you asked that, Jason, because I was reading a book about AI in education. I should send that to you. Maybe you know it. But it's a really wonderful book. And they were talking specifically about that, like measuring success. Like, how do we measure that what we're doing is actually working? And I didn't finish that part. That's where I kind of stopped for the day. But, I thought about it a little bit, and I think it's hard, Yeah, we're all talking about, okay, we're going to adapt an AI tool or whatever, but like everyone is asking in the educational field, asking like, show me the data, like show me that this is going to work. Well, I'm sorry, it might not work. It might not happen. This whole thing is new. There are good research. Other countries or other states, even in the United States, are ahead of others, but there isn't much to depend on. And measuring success, I think this whole concept of measuring success, we really need to rethink it. Teaching to the test, which we've been doing for so long, is not working.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely not working. And we usually, but there's the argument about like, if you cannot measure it, you can't fix it. So we got a bit stuck with that as educator. But I think we really need to focus now on changing the way we look at success, because the whole world is changing and being, interacted more together with the idea of success. When my father was around in this world. His idea of success was like, I'm stuck with this work. I'm going to stay there until I retire. I'll raise 7 children, put them to college. And then, that's the best. And that might have worked for my father, good for him. He was a wonderful man, and he raised all of us with hard work and good ethics. But, being in the same job until you retire might not be the case right now. So the challenge is measuring success. We can't have the same measurement of success as in the best. And that's one layer. And another layer to it is, the whole curriculum and what we teach and how we teach in schools need to be looked at like very deeply. And maybe we'll figure out a way to success. But, I think that, to answer your question, one simple way of measuring success is really the deep learning. When we are educating students, the ultimate goal is for them to be able to have a meaning of what they learn. So if we can create, a curriculum or a toolbox or a process to teach our students where they are actually able to make meanings of what they learn, then I think that would be a really good scale to measure.
It's fantastic. Well, I know things are going to keep changing in our field. And I'm curious to hear your predictions about where things go next and what that might mean for teachers. This could be short term, could be longer term, your choice, but what do you think might happen?
You want to know what I think will happen, what I think should happen.
Oh. Well,
okay.
I don't know. Maybe both. What do you think will happen? What do you think should happen? Happy to hear. I'd love to hear both. Let's
stick with the first question.
Okay.
I think what's going to happen is, unfortunately, if we take, the experience of the many, many years, in education and how things have been progressing. In education, change takes a very long time. And I think that the brave people who will, take that step and say, you know what, as leaders, we have this responsibility. Unless they do that and make a big change on the curriculum and what we teach and how we teach and paying close attention to individual learning and all the skills that our children absolutely need to have to be successful and happy and productive. Unless we have those leaders, it's just going to be taking a very, very, very long time. And, I hope that it doesn't happen. I hope that more leaders will come to recognize that, this is happening really quickly. This needs to be priority. It's not something that we can wait until we'll see everyone, how did everyone else did with this? Those are our children, we're talking about, and generations of students, might struggle because of the decisions that we make now. So, I think it will be probably slower in many educational institutes than others, but I'm hopeful that it wouldn't be bad and it would be faster and more people will take that responsibility and just be brave enough to do it. So we'll see.
Let's hope so. Well, just a couple questions left. This last one's a little bit different. I'm kind of curious about how sometimes people will take something from another field and understand how it has an insight in a place where maybe it was never meant to be. And I'm curious if there is some surprising place where you have borrowed an idea or a way of doing things that you find is important in your work.
I don't know. I really didn't think about that. So can you elaborate a little bit, Jason? Maybe that will ignite something from my experience.
Sure. Yeah, for me, maybe an example. Yeah. So maybe an example for me could be, I was thinking about about choices, the sort of choices we make individually at work. And we have this notion that we have, that one direction could be measurably better than the other direction, or that this is perhaps a very American thing that we think if we are very, very individual in our way of working, that if we kind of strike out on our own, this is the path of greatest reward, right? When we are the most individual. And the thing that I think is a point of inspiration that serves as kind of a counterweight to that is the great and often misunderstood Robert Frost poem, The Road Less Traveled. So in that poem, people tend to think that poem is about taking the unworn path. But actually what the poem says, when you look at the text of the poem, the paths are roughly the same. And that whichever direction you take, there will be another fork just up the road again. And we might like to think that we are taking some unique direction, but very often these decisions that feel so important, very often are not as important as we think they are, not as distinct as we think they are. And I think this is a nice way for me as I'm thinking about the future to kind of dial back the importance in the moment that I feel about making a business decision or a personal decision in my life. So that would be an example that I have.
I love what you said. And it reminds me of a time where I had, I think I was presenting for, I think it might be virtual, but a couple years ago. And the conversation about celebrating, I think it was a presentation about my journey as an immigrant. And the concept of, celebrating your roots and where you are from. And, as much as I really appreciate that, I think everyone comes from somewhere. Everyone has culture. You don't have to have an accent to have a culture. You don't have to have, a different DNA to have a culture. Everyone have a culture. And I remember thinking about it, and I actually delivered keynotes about that with NAYASC in Boston a few years ago. And the idea of celebrating who you are and where you come from and who you are as an individual, I often feel that it's, you have to pick. So you either celebrate your roots or, you have to celebrate, being integrated and part of it. And I always never thought why I have to choose, a tree can still have roots and spread the branches, miles and miles away. So I think to me, and I really love what you said about, celebrating who we are as individual. But I really think that we kind of lost sight of the most important thing, and that's celebrating what brings us together. Human beings are built and meant to be together, to be challenged together and figure out things together and challenge fear together and bring the joy of things back together. I think as a human being, we are wired to be together. And I've always focused on I hear it all the time, celebrate our individualism, and it's awesome and it's wonderful. But what happened to celebrating what we have in common? What brings us together, what everyone brings to the table doesn't matter if it's not serving their community or the humanity. Honestly, someone can accomplish everything in life and the best thing in life. And unless it's a book, take, for example, a poem like the one you just said. It's so beautiful, but it's just beautiful because it means something to you and it resonates with you some way, somehow. So I really think that whatever we do, it matters only because we reflect, we receive and we reflect. So, taking it back to AI and the educational field, I think part of what moved me the most is, doing this together. It's an opportunity for all of us, educators and policymakers and politics and, everyone in between and students and families, to take this opportunity to just let's come together as a community, whatever we are, and see what is not going well. Is there anything we can fix? How can we add? What we should take away and how we work together and teach our children to work together.
Fabulous. Okay. It's my last question. This comes from Louis Najim. Louis is the co-founder and the CEO of a company called
I know
Bevel.
Louis. He's a fantastic person.
Well, perfect. Good. That's
What
great. Okay.
do?
I never know who knows who
Okay.
when they come on to the show, but that's great. I'm glad you know Louis. So his question was, what's something that you believe about learning design or the field that you work in that most people would disagree with? So something you agree that most other people disagree with.
Oh gosh, Louis. Louis and I come from, we share we come from, he comes from Lebanon, I come from Syria, and those two countries are very similar in so many ways. So, in Arabic, I don't know if you're familiar with the Arabic language, but we actually write from right to left.
Yes.
It's not left to right. So, and I always had so much fun doing this. It scared the hell out of some of my students when I start writing, and I still do it. And they're like, oh my God, what is she doing? But to go back to your question, something that many of my colleagues might not really, agree with is I really think that unless we can flip our whole attitude and thoughts about education in general, reverse the whole thing, I don't really think that we are going to be getting anywhere. We've been doing things the same way forever. Mm-hmm. And unless we challenge reversing all of it altogether, I'm not sure that we will, succeed with this. I remember when I was a principal, I got there and they said they used to have a program about teaching finance for third graders. So the third graders will learn how to, write a check and expenses and money and things like that. And they stopped it because lack of resources. And I said, well, we're bringing that back because every child needs to learn about money and how to manage it. And eventually schools across the country start cutting so many programs that teach life skills.
Yeah.
And I think, one thing that many people might not agree with me on is, reverse this whole concept. Bring back the things that we cut without understanding how important they are across interdisciplinary studies, not just when you go to college. It should start really, really early. So reversing the whole education system. Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. That's great. I should have you on again with Andrea Flores. She had a very interesting take on how to shake up, completely rework the entire kind of K to, 12, but then, college and workforce training system.
I would love to.
Somewhat in line with your ideas there.
It
would be great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Fadia. I really appreciate your time. This has been an incredible conversation.
Jason, thank you. I really appreciate this time. I'm glad that we got to coordinate the blue color. And it was a fascinating conversation, and I really, really appreciate you reaching out and hearing me out.
That's a wrap on this episode. If you found this useful, please subscribe and share it with a fellow learning professional. It's the best way to help others find the show. And if you want to keep the conversation going, we have two ways to do it. We have a monthly online AI forum for learning professionals. We also have a Slack community by the same name, totally dedicated to learning professionals. These are great places to meet more people who do the kinds of things that we do and make sense of the world that we're in and what's coming together. You can find the links in the show notes, or you can reach out directly to us at podcast@jackrabbitlx.com. See you next time.